Well, a guy needed a bigger lawnmower, and to pull that lawnmower deck, we picked up this early 50s Ford 8N tractor. It needs a little work, currently not running. So the plan is to get this thing running, driving, looking better, and then we'll go ahead and pull the mower deck back here. Guy can cut his grass, lickety-split. Now, the Ford N-Series tractor was produced from 39 to 52, and this is a 50 to 52, and we can kind of walk around this, look at it a little bit closer, see what we're getting into, and I'll show you some details which makes the 8N different than the 9N and the 2N tractors. I don't know, we'll start over there somewhere. So like I say, in 39, the 9N tractor came out, and it was revolutionary. I mean, it really just changed agriculture completely. Ford went on to say, basically, their competition was the horse. So if you could think about farmers going from a horse to this, it was absolutely phenomenal. And they went on to basically say, paraphrasing, we're making this tractor for people that are not mechanically inclined, meaning they're very easy to operate, maintain, and repair, and that's what made these legendary. The 8N tractor here went on to be the best-selling tractor in North America. They made over 530,000 of these. So some people get confused between the 9N, 2N, and 8N because they look really similar, but there's a few key things that you can look at on this tractor and tell right away it's an 8N, one of those being the running boards. That was an upgrade there. This also has a 4-speed transmission, which the 9N and 2N didn't. The clutch linkage, you could tell that this is a late model. Versus like a 47, this would be a 50 to 52. And there's a couple things on the other side that I could show you as well, kind of give us a year indication. So this engine looks really complete. We got a fuel make it happener, the ignition system seems to be here. And speaking of, we can see a side mount distributor over here, and that also tells us it's a 50 to 52. The earlier models, the distributor was a front mount up here on the front. So there's another indicator there. Also, this back here is called a position control, which runs the Ferguson 3-point system. The Ford 9N was the first mass-produced tractor to have a power takeoff, or PTO, in this 3-point system, again, making them really versatile. You could pull pretty much any implement with this. And one of the final indicators, and there's a lot of them, but these are just ones that I picked up on, is you can see this nice Ford script on the fenders here. So all in all, this thing's complete. We've already got a PTO adapter on this thing. And the biggest issue I noticed earlier, come over and look at this. It's not good. Some sort of flying creatures in here. So remember episode 1 with the Ford Galaxy? We had a little bit of putty on the block. Block was cracked. Well, unfortunately, this entire block in here is made of, well, was made of putty that is doing absolutely nothing. So this block is also cracked and therefore useless, unfortunately. I still say we try to get this thing fired up. It would be nice to make sure the transmission works, the brakes. I doubt the electrical is gonna work, and that's gonna be pretty much the extent of it. We can haul it or tow it or something back to the shop, blow this thing apart, and make it much more gooder. This rig actually has a 12-volt conversion, so a lot of these had generators or a 6-volt system. This is a really common upgrade. Yeah, you snap on an old one-wire kind of GM style charging whirler there. Then you get a bigger lightning cube to spin this puppy over. It just makes starting them a lot easier, especially in the winter. Oh, I gotta delete on these spiders, whatever they are. Do we have a torch? Brake clean? Something? Hello. Deleted. Boy, the wiring on this thing is just messier than Fergie's national anthem. What is that? Boy, we got all the battery. Okay. For some reason it smells like brake clean. Really bad. I'm getting a little woozy under here. This is an updraft carburetor, and it's gravity-fed fuel from the tank up here down into that carburetor, and then it uses vacuum. So we're turning the fuel on. So that should now be flowing, and I'm seeing particles and sediment and dirt, and chunks of acorn, and I think that's a pine needle. Thought that was the choke. That's the choke. Give her just a snip of throttle. Well, it's a runner. Until I killed it. Wow. These old flatheads are hard to kill. They really are. Oil pressure gauge works. We got oil pieces. PTO is engaged. There you can see the PTO turning. That shutoff will be right here. And now it's not spinning, so this is how you engage that power takeoff unit. Let's see if the 3-point works. Engage the PTO. And once we have that engaged, there we go. So the PTO does work as well. Boy, she's smoking really good. Definitely compression in the cooling system. Not only could you hear it, but you could feel the wind blowing. So let's just test the gears quick, make sure the transmission works. We could test the brakes, maybe doodle it around, and that's pretty much all this engine's gonna give us. It's cracked, it's bad shape. Okay. Wow. Oh yeah, we'll be mowing in no time. We just need an engine and everything else that goes with it. Speed demon! 4th gear. Oh yeah, get that highway speed. Brake! Oh yeah, we got brakes. Well, we have a running, riding 1950 to 1952-ish Ford 8N tractor. Problem is it needs a lot of work. It's gonna need a block or a whole engine or something like that. The other issue is I was gonna road this home, but that is obviously not going to happen. So we're gonna have to figure out how to get this back to the Vice Grip Garage Shop. Well, I found a tow hitch. It just happens to be connected to this 4-door 55 Chevy. Sitting here next to the garage. We're working on the other side. Got talking to this good old boy and, well, I made a deal. So now I own this, and the plan is to pull the tractor home with this 55 Chevy. Sure. Aha! The Eiffel Tower of Power. Yeah, it's just a 235. But these things will run forever. He said this sat in a barn for years and years and years until about 5 months ago, and then he went through it, and I could see all new heater hoses, belts, rad hose. All the ignition's been replaced. It looks like it has a rebuilt fuel make it happener on it, but it's all original from the breather to the air cleaner. New battery. I mean, it's already been roadworthy, pretty much. But now we gotta, see if it'll tow. That's a different story. Thankfully, we've got big old brakes on this thing. No, it's as small as you can get, pretty much. Now I gotta tell my wife. Oh boy. Okay. I've never seen a Ford tractor pulled by a 55 Chevy before, so this could get really interesting. U-Haul, what are you towing with? 98 F250? What are you hauling? Honda Civic? Not approved, is what I'm saying. Don't do this at home. Yeah. Clutch is a little spicy. Okay, now the ramps need to go in somehow. Just enough room. Actually, it's gonna be really tight. Oh, but what happens when it turns? One way to find out. Doing somewhere between 10 and 40 miles an hour. Got to find the sweet spot with these tractor tires. The transmission will be fine in neutral because it has a splash lubrication system the way that the gears are cut. So as long as it's rolling or moving, it's lubricating, so we'll be fine there. The goal is just to make this thing run really well and actually put it to work. We're gonna try to find a mower deck for it. I've got quite a few acres of grass that we mow. And this is going to be the ticket. Well, we made it about 50 miles of the Vice Grip garage shop here. Now it's time to get the tractor off of the tow dolly in the shop and just blow this thing apart, see if we can build it better. The goal at the end of the week is to be mowing grass with this thing without issue. Obviously, we've got a lot of work to do. This engine, unfortunately, is a boat anchor. The block is cracked. We know there's an issue with the head or head gasket. It has compression in the cooling system. Thankfully, the transmission shift's fine. The brakes are working. The PTO and 3-point, which we really need, all of that's working fine. So we were lucky enough, since we were searching for one of these, we've got a pile of parts. We've got a different engine we can use. We've got some steel and other things. We're gonna actually be painting this, putting different tires and wheels on. It's gonna look like a nice tractor by the time I'm done. But first, we've got to strip this all the way down. We're actually going to be separating this tractor in half to replace the engine. So I've just got to start removing sheet metal and cooling system and bumpers and accoutrements and this and that things and wigamawoos. Use all your back. All your back. So as you can see, we're stripping this down. We're quite a ways into it now. One of the unique things about old tractors is the engine block itself is essentially the frame. So we have the front suspension here, it pivots off of this, goes up and down like this. And then we've got the radius rods here, but all of that is transferred through the engine block itself. Behind that is another block, that's the transmission. Behind that is the transaxle rear end. So there's essentially 3 big Lego blocks that connect together. Fortunately for me, we're only taking the front half off. Now, what makes some of these tractors even more unique than this, the 2-end, for example, that came out in 42 because of wartime efforts, is some of them had, instead of rubber tires, they had steel tires or steel wheel structures. They had no rubber whatsoever in the rear. Well, we had a rubber shortage. And they didn't even have batteries. They were a hand crank, and we could see that down in here. It would pass through this. You would hand crank it just like a Model A Ford car or truck. And then they had a magneto system instead of that battery. So very, very minimalistic and just a very simple structure. What I'm doing right now is jacking this up. We've got to get this front end disconnected. We're gonna brace up the transmission, take out all the bell housing bolts, and we're gonna try to split this thing in half as gracefully as possible, which means you're about to see a tractor bounce off the floor in my shop. I feel like tires aren't communicating on direction. So believe it or not, that was actually the easy part. Okay-ish, junk. Now I got to take some other gooder-ish and hook it back to okay-ish and try to make a tractor again. And I really do want to paint this. I was being serious about that. So spray the chassis first, then do an entire engine reassembly, paint the tins, put everything back together. It's gonna be a really busy process, but stuff is missing. Well, in the bay next door, we're wasting no time. You can see the 55 up on the lift here. Chad from Volunteer Muffler and Performance is already putting exhaust on it. Ignore the fact it doesn't have rockers or body mounts and the gearbox is leaking and there's other issues. New exhaust first. Over here, you can see we've got our new engine. This is allegedly rebuilt, hopefully not just Craigslist rebuilt. It is an 8N block, also has the side mount distributor over here. So in theory, we should be able to, all this and this and this. We do have some other new pieces, like the starter just fell apart in my hands. I'm gonna clean this up, this mount, put this on the engine, and then the order operation is just to get this right back onto the tractor, get the front wheels back on this thing, bolt it all back together, so we have a rolling chassis again, and then more confusion and not knowing what's next after that. Gotta get the splines lined up perfectly here in order for this to slide in and mate. Crying in the mud. And I gotta make sure to keep this clutch centered, so I can't be roughhousing in here. So it's a delicate but firm, but soft, but aggressive procedure. And it's really fun doing it by yourself. Engine is in, front end's assembled. It even does steering things. And of course, I put in a new throwout bearing. There's a new clutch, flywheel, adjusted the clutch and everything like that. So this is all ready to go. Now we need to paint this chassis before we put the tin on or even paint the tin. So I gotta finish stripping all this cobbled out electrical and gauges, gotta get these rear fenders off, and basically everything else gets a coat of the same color. We'll roll it outside, pressure wash this thing, clean it, degrease it, make some sort of homemade tent, and get the lamp color on. So we got the tractor pressure washed here, and we just got done wiping it all down with basically a wax and grease remover in preparation for paint. Now, I know all of you are expecting to see this beautiful red and gray combination paint, which was the 8N. I'm actually going to do all gray, everything. I actually personally really like the look of the 9N and 2N, kind of that pre-war, war era, just industrial look. You know, Ford was heavily involved in manufacturing, producing wartime equipment and everything else, and they shot it all with that gray. I'm gonna use a rattle can here and just get into all the really tight spaces and hard to reach places, because I'm gonna be using an HVLP gun, and you can't spray them upside down, and you can only spray them briefly horizontal. Then I'll come back with a gun and put some really heavy coats down. We're gonna have matching tires and wheels. We're gonna be painting up some new tin as well. When I'm all done, I promise you, even though it's an 8N, it's gonna look sharp. Well, a few coats later, It's a different color, and personally, I think it's looking fantastic. I can't wait to bolt the tires and wheels up. Wait till you see what we chose for rubber on this thing. It's pretty unique. I gotta let this thing sit overnight and cook, so tomorrow we can start touching it. Then we'll start engine assembly and everything else. We also gotta paint the tins and the steel wheels still, but we're making big progress. Well, my riding lawnmower project was supposed to be pretty straightforward. We picked up this 1950 to 52 Ford 8N, and it turned into quite a project pretty quickly when we found the original engine block cracked. So we dug right into this thing. We had to replace the engine. And of course, while we were in there doing that, we did starter and starter solenoid and all the electrical, new 12-volt conversion. We upgraded the cooling. We went to a 6-blade fan with a shroud, new radiator and hoses. On the other side, we used an old carburetor that we knew would work, but new distributor hoses for the lightning system, sparkulators, all of that is all brand new. We reused some of the lower tin here, but we did put a new hood on it, new headlights, new fuel tank, new battery. And moving back here, we went ahead and put in some new gauges. We got new volt gauges, oil pressure gauges, and of course, that unique 8N tachometer, which also shows us our PTO speed, which we're gonna be using here in just a minute. All of that works, the lighting and all of that. Got a little goofy and made some unique stuff. B&M shifter handle. I like it. Looks neat. And of course, this wood wheel really just pops. That's just a standard old wheel we stained and cleaned up a little bit and threw that on there. In the rear, we changed the look. We went to an early model fender, painted those up as well. Those look great. And then we went with these turf style tires, dish out. In the front, we went to 19s with those snow tires. And to top it off, in the back here, we've got a 60-inch finish mower deck. That's gonna do the business. So all in all, we ended up with the Ford Great N, which is now my ride lawnmower. The only thing left to do is we gotta knock down some grass. And I'm gonna do just that. It's crazy what people are spending on zero-turn mowers these days. And yeah, they're more comfortable and they're faster and this and that, but they're so expensive. This whole setup is a fraction of that cost. And it gets the job done. Plus, it's just the way it used to be, you know? We're gonna try third gear out. This is where a Sherman cruise speed or a high-low comes in handy because you can split your gears. But the Blizzaks do great. They're not cupping or edging up the yard. And the turf tires are doing terrific as well. Even no marks.